December, the cold streets of London. Big business and the buildings that climb to the clouds. Canary Wharf, the epicentre of this world. But in the shadows of these skyscrapers is another world, a nocturnal world. The hidden world of Billingsgate Market. 4 a.m. Everything comes to life at the largest inland fish market in the United Kingdom. Home to a variety of different species of fish, a variety of different people in a variety of different jobs. Stall holders, the market constabulary, and an army of fish porters. One of those porters, Chrissy Gill, is hard at work.
James, second fillets. How many marks we got of them? I started in September 1979. I worked on a little firm called Jex Brothers. That was in the old market. I lasted there not very long. And then I got a better job on Bennett's, which is where I am now, funny enough. Worked there for 3 years. Got me badge in 1981. The market moved in 1982. Started work on Grant and Mays, which is a salmon firm. Then I went to James Nash, which is a kind of fish and chip firm. They do fish and chip sort of companies. Went on to Roger Barton, worked there for 9 years, got made redundant, now I'm back on Bennett's. So that's 34 years, this last September. When you get in the morning, lots of people don't, but we have to check ours in. So we have hundreds of boxes of salmon every day. We check them in, we count them, check the stock in the chill so we know before we start if there's any discrepancies, the stock was right to start with. And then as the stuff comes over, we break it down because obviously lots of the pallets might be mixed. You've got different sizes, different grades. Break them all down, then we start making up orders. Then we come out here and start delivering. Some vans you can leave it on the floor, some vans you have to put it on. And then by about 7:30 we start packing up.
It's fucking lovely in here.
Is it? I'd rather be home in bed.
Yeah, I know you're right.
1600, King Charles I made a royal charter for there to be a meat market, a fruit market and a fish market to supply the people in the City of London, who lived in the City of London. That was in the walled city, as it was then. That charter still stood until 3 years ago, when they done away with all the bylaws. The bylaws were only licensed fish porters could move the fish around. That goes back to before Victorian times. Food was a very expensive commodity in the city, and so to prevent food from being nicked, pilfered or whatever you want to call it, you had to be licensed, you had to be a fit and proper person, so on and so forth. You had a parchment. My parchment, I've still got it. And then there was other laws that included, you have a fish meter man goes around, they can only sell fish that's fit for human consumption. That's debatable on some firms. You've also got, there was a law that said their fish couldn't be sold within 6 3/4 miles of Billingsgate Market. Wholesale fish, that was. That's been done away with. And also now, by doing away with the bylaws, the Corporation of London, if and when this moves, they won't have to supply a market to these traders. So they'll have to set up on their own.
The role of the porter is vital to the life of the market. Also vital to the market is the delivery driver. Peter Eales, now retired, was heavily involved in the transport at Billingsgate.
Well, I started originally in the old market. It was about 1968, I think it was, something like that. I started off as a lorry driver, delivering the fish from the market, what the porters used to put on the lorries, all flatback lorries. We used to have all cobblestones then, and we used to park our lorries up the hill. I was parked in Pudding Lane, which is right opposite where the Great Fire started. We get down there early and the porters would come up with the fish. At a certain time we had to leave and deliver. I ended up owning my own lorries, 15 lorries, and I used to go all over the country delivering the fish for the market, refrigerated lorries. So I was quite successful. We used to deliver to all the big supermarkets, Sainsbury's, Waitrose. I ended up the last one of the big companies, big transport firms. I don't think there's any down there now. They're mainly people go and pick their own fish up, you know. The transport side of the market is finished really now. There's not maybe 1 or 2 independent vans and drivers. Well, at the time they used to have what they called shover-ups. They were like homeless and people out of work would come down the market early in the morning because the barrows to get up the hill, there was all cobbles. They needed a big push because the barrows was loaded with fish. They would push these barrows up the hill for the porters to help them. That went on for years and years until we moved to the new market. At least once a week there'd be a fight down there. They used to line up for work of a morning, and it was very similar to the old docks where nobody was permanent. Temporary porters used to stand under the clock, and people would come and pick them up for work if they had a lot of fishing, they need extra porters. But they'd all be actually fighting to get that job, it was a good job. Loads of boxers down the market at that time, big tough blokes, I remember one day there's a bloke had a heart attack down there, and they was looking at him and seeing how he was, and they was all around him. All of a sudden, 2 porters got up and run to his shop to get his job. It's unbelievable, wasn't it? That's how life was then. If you didn't go to work, you never got paid. There's been a lot of talk for at least 10, 12 years now that they're going to be moving it because of the value of the property. It's very valuable now, the new market. It depends on what the property is going to be worth, if it's worth keeping it open as a market or selling it off for property developers. It's such a tradition, you don't want it to die, But once they decide to sell it, they'll import it in the other markets, that's all. Yeah, they'll have to put up with the smell.
As light begins to touch the market, work is starting to wrap up.
Mind your legs there, please.
Davy, another porter, is packing up after another long morning.
Being in Billingsgate sort of runs in the family. My granddad was in the market, my father was also a fish porter, and he first brought me down the old market in Lower Thames Street when I was 13. It was 1973, doing 1 day a week, which is Sundays. I was getting £1 a day. In 1973, at 13 years old, that was a lot of money. Then all of a sudden I started doing the Saturdays and the Sundays, and during school holidays I was working all the way through the week. I was getting a lot of money. So I thought to myself, well, who needs to go and work in an office, get qualifications? I left school at 16, started down the market. When I was 18, I got my porter's badge. Started on from there. Just have done a few different jobs down here. I've not worked for that many companies, about 5 or 6. Ironically, every company I've ever worked for has gone skint down here, so doesn't say a lot for me, does it? Now this series is like the Punch and Judy show. We get this every morning with these two arguing. Look, listen to them, look. Right, where have we got here? Where have we got?
Where we got? We've got the 1.4611 safe.
Yeah.
That's safe.
Right, we're going to get 12 kilos of wings out, or what?
Oh, very much doubt it.
Oh. So 1 yes and 1 no so far. Your social life goes right out the window. It's constant night work. And that does wear you down. And as for going out in the evenings, it's just forget it. You just can't do it. You just cannot manage it.
Wrecks your marriage because you've got no social life, especially now with the hours we do now. So you kind of live for the weekends, and the market is Tuesday to Saturday. So Mondays is wiped out because whoever you're with or whatever, they're either working on a Monday or whatever. So it's hard. A lot of us down here have all been through different relationship problems. I'm not saying that's the only thing with it, but it's hard. It is hard to sort of stay in a relationship with these stupid hours. But having said that, the market's been pretty good to me. I've always earned a reasonable living. Not so good now. The money's not so good now, but it's a job, so I'm happy for that.
It's hard, but I wouldn't have swapped it for the world. I don't regret a minute coming to work in Billingsgate. I've really enjoyed my time down here.
Well, I loved my time down the market. I worked there for 40 to 50 years. Absolutely loved it, I miss it a lot because I miss the banter and the comradeship of the porters. It was a wonderful life to work in the market.
The funniest stories, the things I can think of, but it's just the people that were so funny. Real characters. Peter, you're a great, funny man. Peter Brown, all laugh and a giggle. You should come over here every morning, have a cup of tea, and it was just a constant laugh all the time. But that's all, they're all gone now, everything's gone.
The ever-changing world of Billingsgate, however long it lasts, holds great characters and great stories. And until those doors finally close, tradition will stay.
I've got to go and show me face, Frank, in case they think I fucked up home. What's happening, Dave?